has a little bit more information
This
on
one
it,
does?
some of the suggested motions.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the Goffstown Select Board meeting for January 27th, 2020. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up would be the acceptance and correction of minutes from 1/13/2020, public and non-public.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes, public and non-public, from 1/13/20.
Second.
Any discussions, corrections? No. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining? Motion passes. We have some announcements. First up is a reminder to residents interested in being run to service as an elected town or school district official. The candidate filing period ends this Friday, January 31st at 5 p.m. Candidates filing on the last day must appear in person. The candidate openings are currently listed on the town's website. This list can be found under the town clerk's section 2020 elections information. We also have a traffic alert for Henry Bridge Road. The Goffstown Department of Public Works announces bridge work on Henry Bridge Road currently scheduled for around 10 a.m. on Thursday, January 30th, weather dependent. A concrete truck will be parked near the south abutment to feed concrete to Evrock's crew beneath the bridge. Flaggers will be present to help facilitate alternating one-way traffic around the concrete truck. Delays should be expected. Please use caution when driving through the work zone. Please contact Goffstown Department of Public Works, 497-3617 with any questions. Thank you for your patience. Again, that is Thursday, January 30th. Also, as a reminder, both the school district and the town will hold their respective deliberative sessions. The school district's deliberative session is Saturday, February 1st at 10 a.m. at the Heber Auditorium at Goffstown High School. A snow date, if necessary, is planned for Monday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. The town's deliberative session is Tuesday, February 4th at 7 p.m. at the Heber Auditorium, the Goffstown High School. Snow date, if needed, planned for Thursday, February 6th at 7 p.m. The deliberative session is the first half of the annual town meeting. The warrant articles will be explained, discussed, and may be amended at the deliberative sessions. The sessions will be determine the wording of the articles as they appear on the ballots, which will be voted upon during the second session on Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, which is the day everyone votes. I'd also just like to make mention, Derek, that town clerk is looking for volunteers to work on the polls on February 11th. And if you want to volunteer, it could be as little as 3 hours. We could sure use the help. You can call town clerk at
8990.
8990, 497-8990, extension 109. And that, let Kathy Ball know that you're available to help out.
Excuse me, can I just make a comment?
Go ahead.
This says March 10th, 2020, but I believe it should be March 11th, 2020. Is it? Or is it the 10th?
Pretty sure it's the 10th.
Right.
It is the
Never mind.
10th?
Yep.
The-
The 11th
It is the
primary.
10th. March 10th. Anything else there? No?
No.
Then first up on our agenda this evening would be Public Works Director, road plan conception and framework for 2020. And Adam, I might interrupt you for 5 minutes just to see public comment at the time.
Sure. I can do it fast.
Just thought we'd get started.
It may take longer than 5 minutes, you're right.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, good evening, thank you. So, yes, 4A, I've got in your packets a cover sheet and some information about the proposed 2020 road plan. To create this road plan, we are looking at what is in the budget as if the budget itself and then the special article for additional road plan funding has been approved. Because the change with the special article amount and what was taken out of the budget by the budget committee and subsequently in the article, we've elected not to try to get beyond 2020 until that dust settles from the town meeting, because 500,000 is pretty significant, so it'll change everything if it fails or passes. So what you have in your packets is 2020. As far as the concept framework of the road plan, looking at a fully town as general contractor model, which we had done for the last few years up until 2019. In 2019, we contracted about 5,000 square yards of road work down in Pinardville in the Warren Ave neighborhood. But the remaining 14,000 or so yards was taken care of by Public Works, mainly Shirley Hill and section of Tyrrell Hill that was done earlier in the season. If you look at our overall road plan over the last few years, we were in default in 2015, but from 2015 on, we've slowly been trying to build that back up to at least close to where we had been previously prior to 2015, with a plateau in the CIP anyway, starting in that 2016 CIP year, looking at the $2 million to $2.5 million range where it would level off except for any increases due to inflation. So I've got now that the road plan's back under my realm, I've tried to reinstitute that. So going forward with the CIP, you'll see that same target level here as we get about 2 or 3 years down the road. And I think at that level, we'll be able to maintain what we've got with the maintenance overlays with some additional reclaim projects each year. Just for some stats, in 2019, we addressed about 6% of the overall town road network. And that included both reclamation projects and maintenance overlays, as well as some thin shim or Band-Aid shim, you might refer to it as, to get through some of those roads that just the traffic levels or the just budget does not allow reclaiming everything that probably should get a reclaim project. So we do these thin shims to kind of buy us some time to reevaluate whether or not we can do a full reconstruction. In some cases, for a very low volume road, it might receive just overlays or shims periodically throughout its life, with the idea that it's going to be pretty far down the line before we get to rebuild a side street like that. If you look at the 2020 proposal, which is on the next page, that represents about just shy of 8% of the total road network, with the caveat that some of that is double dip because it's the overlay for what we rebuilt in 2019. Assuming that the budget and the special article passes, we'll have $1.952 million for the work, and that will be enough to get us what you see on page 2. Primarily, the rebuild finished the reclamation project on Shirley Hill Road, so that'll be from Magnolia Drive to Route 114. It's a pretty healthy project there. Good news is it's in a rural area, so we can get a little bit more square yardage faster than we could on a Warren Drive. And certainly there's less drainage and other utilities in the area, so we can get a lot done on those types of streets. Shirley Hill will be finished. We'd also then jump over, or simultaneously with other crew, be on Warren Ave and the neighboring Duclos Street to try to get all the way to the top of the hill up at Pinardville Heights. This will continue on where the contractor left off at the end of 2019. So those will be the reclaim projects. So be slightly more in-house. So versus the 14,000 we had done in-house in 2019, we look up to just over 20,000 total. To give you an idea of capacity for the department, it's a little hard to apples. Of course, each road's a little different, but in 2016, we had a pretty healthy year. We were able to accomplish 32,000 square yards of reclaim that year. So we're not close to touching that number. Also in 2020, I anticipate a lot less work on the athletic field pits as we're winding down now the town's portion of that project. So moving on from the reclaim projects, we've got a handful of 1.5-inch top wearing course roads. So Tyrrell Hill Road from Center Street to number 41, that was the section that was reclaimed last year, that'd receive 1.5 inch top. But then the streets that were under the 2019 contracted work, Warren Ave, Gold, Eden, and then a sewer project on Fairview Street. After that, we move on to our maintenance overlays. So these start with roads that were rebuilt as part of the road plan previously, and now we're getting into the 10, 11, 12-year-old streets that are due for some treatment, so we don't dip below that curve of, when we start to lose a road and it takes more money to keep them up. So believe it or not, the rest of Tyrrell Hill is due. That was rebuilt 12 years ago. That's 33,000 square yards there. But that would receive 1.5 inch overlay, and that would be all the way to Montalona Road. And then other noteworthy, Elm Street from transfer station to Main Street. The big note there would be we're going to have to coordinate with the work at Henry Bridge Road, since that's going to have a bridge closure for a portion of the summer. With an overlay, the nice thing is it's usually a day impact. They'll probably break it up into 2 days just based on that length, but alternating one-way traffic, so we'd wait until after school starts, sort of thing, and try to wrap them up before school lets out if we can. Tyler Drive, we know we've encumbered some money for that, for the Tyler Drive sidewalk and for an overlay of the street itself. And then High Street and Patty would be other noteworthy. But we've got a few others in there that folks might recognize as needing work. Merrill Road, Lynchville Park, Center Street itself would receive, including the roundabout, would receive a mill to keep the curb reveal as is, but then put back in 2 inches with an overlay there. And then a handful of streets that are in pretty rough shape: Prospect, French and Rising, Welch, Lesnick, Crockett, Robin, Grady Hill, and Upper Worthley above Merrill. Those are all on the failed end of things, but we just don't have enough money to keep them in a full reclaim project, at triple or quadruple the cost per square yard. So best we can do there, but we do want to give those some attention, especially Grady. It's pretty noteworthy. That's been deferred twice since 2016, once in 2016 and again in 2019. So it's been up to the top twice. So that one is probably my highest priority as far as the Band-Aid shims this year. So that is the proposal. And then the idea would be to sit tight until after town meeting, and then once we know if that's a go, then we will know that we've got our, I think anyway, going forward, our budget would include the default value to include that 500,000. We could actually put forward a 2021 and beyond longer range plan. So,
Anybody got any questions? I'm going to ask just 1 second before we do that for public comment. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none? Continue on. Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, thank you. Adam, would you be able to kind of talk us through how you guys came to this? We talk about the different roads and what portion of the, pie chart they're kind of in. So how do we, walk us through how you would explain this to somebody whose, their road is in failure, right? And how are we prioritizing within all of these different categories?
So typically the first thing that happens is, we sort of divide the town into different categories depending on number of cars per day travel. So we try to do the most good for the most people that we can, and also those are usually the longest roads, so they have the biggest dollar value that we're trying to protect by keeping the maintenance overlays, up to currency. So we'll look at first dividing them into higher volume and lower volume streets. Of the higher volume, we try to target about 70-ish% on more main roads for the reclaim program right now, in order to get any that are already so bad, i.e. Shirley Hill, that they need to be rebuilt. And it's such a main road that a Band-Aid shim on that is not going to last very long at all with the amount of traffic that's all over it. So then after that, it sort of makes sense to work our way with the neighborhoods. Two things. We try to address the neighborhood. So right now we've been working since we did College Road 2016. We've been trying to finish that neighborhood in Bernardville from College Road up. And then also spread out the work if we can in different geographic areas of town too. So it starts to become a little bit of that. So there may be 10 streets that all are roughly the same condition. Maybe they're all about the same length, about the same age. So then it might be just, okay, well, we haven't done anything in this quadrant of town this year or the last 3 years, so we're trying to add something there. This year, though, for the reclaim projects, we really only had enough to do those two, Shirley Hill and then the Warren Duclos pair in Pinardville. But for instance, the flats area of Pinardville, which Selectman LeMay knows pretty well, that's got a lot of streets that are all in failure mode, and so I think in about 2 or 3 years, we move in there and we'll start chipping away at those streets too. So try to stay geographic, and then you've got some drainage to tie into, and you don't let too many years go by before you have an old system connected to a new. It's nice to keep it going. The wearing course primarily are just the streets that were reclaimed the previous year, so those 1.5 inch wearing course. But as far as the 1.5 inch overlays go, some of that is really just going back and looking at the books. Okay, so here we are. We shoot nominally for a 10-year return cycle on maintenance overlays of main roads. It's about that point where you start to see some fatigue cracking, some centerline cracking, that sort of thing, some rutting on the wheel lanes. So we'll go back and look, and we just start at where the road plan started. I guess it's probably 20 years now ago, and try to chase those roads that were rebuilt then, and now overlay them, since they're all coming due every 10 years. In this case, we've got Tyrrell Hill, which is, I think I said 12 years old at this point from being rebuilt. But the idea being, in that 10, 11, 12 years, we'll overlay them again. And that usually keeps them in the good roads, good range. So that piece is a little bit easy. That kind of builds itself, that portion, because you're just looking back and trying to make sure we haven't missed any that are due. Then once that's 85% of the dollars between those two things, all the reclaimed streets, because they're the highest cost overall, and then the overlay roads were the first roads that were part of the road plan, so those are more of the main roads that are pretty long and need a lot of work. Then it just becomes, we've got dozens of streets that are totally failed, and you really, pick those if you can, that maybe a collector street. So Grady Hill Road would be a collector road. It's sort of, it's not a neighborhood, not a dead end, not a cul-de-sac street. It actually carries people, and that's their primary path to get to Hooksett or Concord. They would take Grady Hill to get to East Dunbarton Road and out of town. So that one rises to the top over, say, for instance, Langen Drive is in terrible shape, but it's a cul-de-sac street. That one is so bad that we're actually going to propose in 2021 to rebuild it rather than have it be a Band-Aid shim. But it didn't make this list, even though it's right up there and could just as easily be substituted for any of these streets. That's how bad it is. So then it just becomes, okay, which of these have been either a winter icing problem because they're so bad that the center of the road is sunk, so now we have maybe car accidents might be prevalent. Complaints, so we'll look at our work order system. If we've had 10 complaints on a certain street, and then the same street that has the same condition, but for whatever reason there haven't been any complaints, so the squeaky wheel, I can't believe I'm saying this on TV, squeaky wheel can get the grease for the road plan. But usually the complaints are drainage related in one way or another, either water on the road, water running off the road, water staying on the road and icing over. So those can kind of drive some of those decisions. And then of course we're out and about, and the drivers are out and about, so they'll give us feedback if they have a real bad icing spot that maybe we know if we have a refreeze event where it melts during the day and freezes at night, we might get a repeated call. Those are starting to go away the longer we've been into the road plan. A lot of the known spots are getting repaired, but they still come up, so that can tend to bring a street up. I think that's pretty much it, but sadly there's more in the real rough condition than we'd like, and it really just starts, that's really where you can start to look at the map and say, okay, let's try to get a few from the mountain area, let's try to get a few from Pinardville, try to get a few from the north end of town, if you can.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the more, we hear more about the really bad ones, so I think it's important putting this much consideration into protecting our assets that we're also able to explain why we're not prioritizing some of the worse off roads. So I appreciate that detail. I just have one more question. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
So last year we had a lot of issues with timing with Continental. Obviously, most of that's weather related and situational. Do you kind of have a game plan for how to try to optimize getting them into town
So the goal this year would be to get as many of the bottom half of these done early season as we can. The second item, business tonight, to award those contracts will certainly go a long way towards that, both for the gravel and the road resurfacing itself. Sometimes the spring dictates more than anything, you know, how early you can get out there. But the idea would be to give them this list and try to get as many as we can early season. I know last year with the reclaim projects, the crushed gravel was an issue, getting the pile big enough to actually finish that project and get it ready for paving. But really, it's just a constant coordination. We've got a pretty good groove. One of the reasons I think we had a fairly good amount of bidders, even though one of the big ones didn't, was just that we have a decent road plan in town. You know, even though it's not as much as we'd all love, I'm sure, it's still quite a bit bigger than a lot of other towns. So we are up there on their priority list, even if it doesn't seem like it at times. That last 2 months or so of the schedule gets tough because everybody around the state's calling for their roads that they all start to worry about, the weather starts to look like it might turn. So really the idea should be for us to get as many done early as we can. Certainly the roads that don't need any kind of minor drainage tweaks before they get overlaid would be up there.
Mark?
Thank you.
When we started the project, Warren Ave area, we replaced all the natural gas and we added the natural gas. Are we still on track or on a plan when we do the flats? Would we add natural gas to that area as well? Has that still been in priority discussions at all?
That was that came out of that was able to come about because of our last go round when we had sort of put out I think we called it a 10-year road plan, but it was more like a 7-year road plan. But we had a big stakeholder meeting. We invited all the utilities, the water precincts, gas company, Comcast, just to say, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. If anybody's got any projects they would love to get into town, here's what we're thinking. Come talk to us. And one of the first to do so was Liberty Utilities, and they said, well, we'd love to add some new customers, and if we can do it. The problem that all these utility companies face is that if we repave a road, now there's the road moratorium that says you can't come in and excavate without resurfacing, that section of road and paying quite a bit to do it. So for them to be able to know that they can come in, either leave it patched, or if we're going to do it same year, maybe even we could follow it up and pave over it, and they wouldn't even have to patch in their trench. They can save a lot of money, get a lot further. They can offer a for free hookup for customers. So they were able to do that because they knew we'd be coming back through the neighborhood. The one problem with that is it sort of stretches out the pain for the neighborhood because they've got Liberty Utilities in for a year, and then the contractor, and now us, be up the street maybe from some of those that had it last year, but feels like you're surrounded by construction for a few years. But in the end, you've increased your property values, the value of the neighborhood's gone up, certainly with all the extra utility.
And the price
And
goes down.
and your
natural
utilities
gas
cost
is
if you
cheaper.
can, right.
And to me,
So they've approached us about the Flats area. That's their next target if they'd like to add some customers there. So I've let them know that all based on where the road plan goes here, that's going to be on our short-term radar. So I would expect they'd be hanging some door hangers before too long.
I feel it'll strengthen our infrastructure in that area, and it'll just, as Peter just said, value to the property, value to houses, and hopefully, if we can work that out, there's enough of a window, Liberty and us, we can get together and try to formulate a plan. I mean, I'd look forward to having it, if the rest of us would be able to get in on it.
I'm gonna talk dollars. You know me, dollars. So the proposed budget, with the special article, you said 1.9?
So that's correct. If you include the resurfacing budget, reclamation budget, additional reclaim special article, sidewalk money, gravel and stone. I feel like there's one line I'm leaving out, but that's, so it's several lines all, put together for the road plan itself, but.
Okay, so that's 1.9 of new money. Now,
Correct.
what do you have left for old money?
So we've got some encumbered funds. The last number I had was $380,000.
380?
That, I think, is gonna be reduced just slightly. We had to reduce the Continental PO. Derek, maybe help me, I can't remember the amount, but it was part of the project at the building. We ended up using some more on radio repairs than we had encumbered originally for the parking lot, but
Is that just the
Approximately.
three?
And that 380 would go to the 2019 contracts.
that's correct. Yep.
Are those just the three noted on this page, or are there more?
That is, yes, enough to overlay those. There is, let's see, that includes the DPW facility parking area. I don't have that breakdown, but it's probably more than just the overlay amounts, if I had to guess on the,
And then my next question is, on the where courses, the course that you put down after you've done your, I don't see Shirley Hill Upper on that part.
So we kind of went back and forth on that. If you look at, we've got actually, you don't have that sheet, sorry, I can't look at it. I've got a little bit of contingency built into the plan. Enough for either a late season, if things go well, we could have a late season maybe addition to the reclaim list. We might think about changing the Merrill Road Band-Aid shim, for instance. That's a kind of a quieter place to maybe spend the fall if we have a late season construction. We might be able to upgrade that with a semi-rebuild to put some drainage in. Maybe Langham Drive that we mentioned earlier could pop up into 2020. But that also allows us to potentially overlay. We were thinking about waiting on the Upper Shirley and then just overlay the whole thing
Following year.
2021 with one long pull. But if the contingency stays intact, then we'd add that one back in. And that would certainly get us to that entire encumbrance.
Anybody else?
Ms. Conlon?
Go ahead, Kelly.
What do you anticipate the percentage of this that'll be contracted out? Do you have any idea?
So right now, my proposal is none. This would be in-house. Town is general contractor anyway. We do sub out the paving itself, any curbing work, but town drainage, town gravel, road fabrics, which is a reversal from the reversal that we had for 18 and 19.
Right.
But for the cost difference, we're not paying for the profit of having a contractor do the work. We can dictate schedule a little better, both start, stops, and any pauses if need be. And we can also control costs. Whereas, you hit some ledge and as you saw in the water main project, changes, change orders can get pretty big pretty quick. I think it was $90,000 on just the water main project. So we have ways to flex on a town as GC where, in other words, we'd be paying a change order on that kind of work. So, yes, my philosophy is do what we can in-house until we get to the limit. We've got an item on non-public, talk about maybe a small reorganization for the department, and if that part of that is to address some of the backlog of any work orders that we have. So a way to still get the other tasks of the job done while we're rebuilding roads for the majority of the year.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Okay. Bid results? Is that next?
If I could, just before we moved on, if the
Pardon me?
board would like, I know I didn't put it on here, maybe I did.
No, it's under the recommendation.
I should have used some italics, but if you would entertain a motion to approve this proposal, that allow us to finalize some of our plans, even though we don't have the budget money squared away yet until the meeting.
Well, yeah, we can do it on contingency of the budget.
So I'll make a motion,
Go ahead.
Chairman, to approve the 2020 road plan that's been presented tonight, contingency upon the budget. This will allow the DPW to notify stakeholders and subcontractors, and also allow DPW engineering and admin staff to finalize construction plans and begin scheduling the work.
I'll second.
Motion by Collis, seconded by Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
Okay, next item I've got, we opened bids on the 15th at Town Hall. We have several, 5 that I'd like to make recommendations on tonight. We first opened road, stop me if I'm out of order on your packet, but I think should be road resurfacing first.
Right.
These are all up to 3-year contracts, assuming we're willing to go that long, which I am. First is road resurfacing. We received 3 bids. I recommended awarding to the lowest bidder, Continental Paving of Londonderry. Would you like me to do them all together and take a vote, or anybody have any preference to go one at a time?
Let's, I'm gonna do them individually because the next two we're gonna put off.
Okay.
And we'll do those in, non-public. So, motion on the road resurfacing contract.
I'll make a motion to award the 3-year road resurfacing contract to Continental Paving.
Second.
Any discussion? How many bids did you receive?
3.
Three. On discussion? On favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
Thank you. I should have mentioned on the road resurfacing, that's based on liquid asphalt price as it is now, but as the state liquid asphalt price index changes, that price changes too. So we benefit when price goes down, but of course the contractor doesn't lose out, so that's why they're willing to go to a 3rd year. Okay, thank you. Next up is line striping. We received 5 bids for this.
I want to do that in non-public.
Can I give you at least the recommendation in public, or do you want to hold off until after?
I'd rather hold off till after
Okay.
on both of these.
Okay, next up, we've got street sweeping. That's a 3-year contract. 2 bids were received. We're recommending awarding to low bidder Talco Enterprises of Nottingham. They provided our roadside mowing last year. They did a great job at that, so we would happily have them in for street sweeping as well.
We'll do them 2 motions.
I make a motion to award the street sweeping bid to Talco, unit price of $170.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Thank you.
Now, roadside mowing.
And as I mentioned, we would recommend awarding to Talco Enterprises of Nottingham. They provided the work last year. 1 bid was received.
I'll make a motion, we allow the 2020 mowing bid to Talco. $85 an hour, or no,
A bunch of different.
I know I got a couple different prices here.
Well, here's the,
As I presented.
there's different prices because of the
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
terrain.
Different
So I would just say,
Talco in general.
yes.
Yep.
I'll second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. So the other 2 will be non-public. Item 4 Charlie, we had a request, and this has sort of been an ongoing request over the years. But the residents of private road, Surratt and Water Road, actually.
We don't have it.
There's no
packet.
tab.
Sorry, no.
The only other thing I'll point out is you do have a 6:30 public hearing.
Okay, I'm
on the
sorry.
traffic ordinances,
Yeah, let's do that.
and then we can get back.
Yeah.
So that's a tab 5A.
Yep.
Yep.
We don't have the posting?
No, I did not include the posting. It's written on each ordinance where it was posted publicly and which issue of the Union Leader.
Okay, so we have a public hearing scheduled for 1/27/2020, and then 2/10/2020 at 6:30 for 3 traffic ordinances. This is, we open the public hearing, and let's do the first one.
Stop sign on the road, is it?
I don't know the way this is set up. It's
Stop sign on Bell and
stop sign on Bell Road at the intersection of Barg. Anybody here to speak to that? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll bring it up again on 2/10/20. The next one would be speed limit ordinance on John King Drive. Is there anybody here to speak to that? Seeing none, Well, again, that'll be brought back up on 2/10/2020. And when will we vote on that? The 24th, right?
Yes, the vote will be on the 24th.
The final vote will be on the 24th. And then a stop sign on Second Ave at the intersection of Summer Street ordinance. Is there anybody here that would like to speak to that? Seeing none again, this will be brought up again on 2/10/2020 and a final vote on 2/24/2020. We'll close the public hearings.
Okay, so 4C on the agenda, no packet information for this, but we've had requests to increase the amount of trash and recycling barrels that serve the Surratt and Water Road neighborhood right now. Those are private roads not maintained by the town. But as part of the solid waste ordinance, every residence is eligible for a barrel as long as it's a single or duplex, single family or duplex. So those residents are eligible for barrels. For whatever reason, as time has passed, those houses were allowed to leave the barrels at the end of Surratt Road at the back road intersection. Because it's such a long private road compared to maybe some others that we have in town where the residents, like everybody else, brings their barrels out for the day of and back. The solid waste ordinance does require barrels to be taken in and out, so I wasn't here 25 or so years ago for the discussion of how we got to this point, but they've got, I think there's 20, in the range of 20 or 24 houses down on those two streets. Approximately half are full-time, where the rest are seasonal. Right now, I believe there are 5 trash barrels and 7 recycling barrels at the end of Surratt Road. They're kept right there, maybe 50 feet or so back from the back road. About 7 years ago, there was some discussion about increasing the amount of barrels. And at the time, there had been some complaints about overflowing barrels and trash had been blowing into the nearby cemetery. And the people that maintain that cemetery, it's not maintained by the town, but they had complained about the amount of trash from these barrels that are right there at the fence. So the decision was made not to increase the number of barrels because there was some concern that this was just being used because there's nobody that lives there right at the barrels, that people were using this on their way to Manchester as a commuter trash dump. You see a big line of barrels, just go throw your trash there as you might be coming through town. I don't know if that is the case or if it's just a matter of not enough barrels for the people that live there, so the barrels overflow. I suppose we could hide in the bushes and wait and watch all week long, but I'm not going to do that unless you really tell me to. So,
Can we get a motion?
let me get out of here right now before you do. At the time in 2012, when this letter was sent to the neighborhood, the answer was if you build some sort of enclosure that can be locked, keep the barrels inside, undercover for the week, and then they just get unlocked and pulled out the day of trash pickup and recycling pickup, then you can have more barrels. But if the answer is going to be that you are going to leave them out there all week, 24/7, we don't want to increase the number of barrels and increase that possibility that folks are just dumping there on their way through. Personally, I don't necessarily have a huge feeling one way or another about it. I think if I had to guess, if there's 12 full-time residences and a bunch more seasonal, 5 trash barrels fills up pretty quick. I know 1 barrel at my own house fills up pretty quick. So I have a feeling that overflowing might just be the household trash generated by the residents that are there full-time. So they've asked for a modest, maybe two more of each. I don't know. I don't know if it makes much of a difference from the how it looks, the aesthetics of it all. But they asked, so I said I would come to the board and at least put it out in front of you if you wanted to entertain adding to that, or maybe putting the same stipulations on it, or any other thoughts.
Have we audited the recycling barrels?
Perhaps, but I didn't look at the audit information, so I don't know how they've been.
I mean, if they're putting the trash in the recycle barrels, well then, that is an issue that we want to take care of. We don't want trash and recycling mixed up. I mean, I don't see a big problem with,
The problem with that is, and we've seen this in other places in town, the more you put out, the more they'll come. I mean, there's gonna be illicit dumping there. They're gonna fill up 6 barrels, they'll fill up 8, they'll fill up 10. fill up whatever you put out there, because it's a convenience for them to stop and dump their trash. But maybe it's worth a try for a limited duration, to see what happens.
How much frontage do they have there? Like, is there physically enough room to put more barrels? I mean, what
Oh,
does
yeah, it's
that?
wide-
Pretty,
It's wide
Wide
open.
open.
Well, I know the area, but I'm just saying what portion they own. Like, I don't know what the property lines are. You know what I mean?
Well, the property's down on the
Physically know that.
river.
No, I know that, but that frontage where they currently have their bins, is there enough room there to put more with
Oh,
that?
Well,
yeah.
that whole
Yeah.
road
Yeah.
down there, yeah, there's
pretty
plenty of
long,
room.
long stretch. You know, the one big argument against is that now you're abutting the cemetery, so you're adding more. So from the cemetery side of the fence, looking at the, back of a long line of barrels, the more that you have, the worse it looks.
I'm
There
not
is a-
sure if the residents in that really mind.
That is true.
So
Go ahead,
as,
Mark.
as the trash complaint comes forward, is it a seasonal type complaint we're dealing with, or is it
I didn't-
a year-round?
I couldn't find, as far as the number of barrels?
Yeah.
From the
Or
residents
the
themselves.
number of people
Um,
there that are,
I think it's a year-round concern that they fill the barrels. I don't know, it's degrees of full, so, the top's flopping open and there's trash stacked on top, or is it, all
But
contained?
there's more and more full-timers down there. Every year, somebody fixes something up and makes it a full-timer, so.
Right.
I don't have a problem with it.
2 more trash barrels,
Two
2
and
more,
two.
yeah, 2 more recycle barrels.
Yeah. Is that your
And-
motion?
Try.
Yeah, that's and you wanted like a 6-month period, or you wanna just make it,
6 months,
Yeah,
yeah,
let's revisit it.
just,
okay, so it'll be 2 and 2.
that was your motion, Mark?
That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Collis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And then if I could sneak in a D that's not on the agenda, sorry, Derek. Just a couple updates on the two projects that we have ongoing. You mentioned the Henry Bridge Road traffic alert for Thursday. We do have some concrete coming in, so I'll work backwards from that alert. We've contractors came in, as you know, to do a little bit of prep here this winter. They were able to get their staging set up and come down and sound the concrete, so they bang on the concrete and listen for cavities in the concrete itself. There'll be signs of what's known as spalling, where the concrete will pop off at areas that the rebar behind it might be rusting, and as it rusts, it expands and pushes the concrete off. So they sounded, they marked off their areas that needed to be refaced, and did all the removal. They'll be ready on Thursday. So they've sounded and removed concrete on the full south abutment and half of the north abutment. The north abutment's a little bit more tricky because the damage goes further down to the water line, and they don't want to pop off concrete into the water or place concrete that close to the water while it's high. So they're going to focus on the south side on Thursday, but they're ready to place concrete on the areas that they've removed. The plan is they're doing a little bit more than they thought they'd be able to here in the winter, which is good news, so we can shorten hopefully that window in the summer of full closure while they jack the bridge up. Right now, we're still planning to start right after school lets out, but that end date is now shifting to the left, so barring anything crazy, that's getting better by the day. Then the field project, the sports field itself, they're working on the sand layer, they're almost done. They might have even finished today, actually, on the drainage layer for the sand, where they actually will play the sports. The loam will be placed in the spring when things dry out, and that'll be one of the last things, as we're working our way out of the area, they'll loam and seed the area for playing. The pond area, so the stormwater management pond on site, the first one anyway, they've got it, the rim is where it needs to be. Now they need to be excavating down to get to the bottom of the pond. As they do, they encounter groundwater. As we know, it's going to be a wet pond. So they're dewatering there while they can get the excavation down to the bottom layer and start placing that impervious clay layer to maintain the water that Rick's going to use in the future for irrigation. So as it rains, it'll fill up even more than it normally would. He'll pump it off and water the grass with it. So they're excavating that this week. Parking lot itself is ready for gravel, so once we gravel that in, that'll help, and it's getting a little wet down there right now as we're at subgrade, but the electrical towers for Eversource are built back out, but we're doing the finishing touches on smoothing out those slopes for them, since they need a nice gentle slope up to the bottom of the towers. Eversource is also doing some work in the area, clearing the right of way, so it's busy if you're out and about in the neighborhood, but
Par's up and now working, right? Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Today. Alrighty,
coming along well.
thank you.
Thank you.
And we have another public hearing scheduled at 6:45, and it is now 6:45. The public hearings under RSA 31:95-B, accept and expend unanticipated funds, FY 2020 Cultural Conservation Grant in the amount of $13,905, conservation of hand-painted theater curtains. Should I read the whole thing out, Derek? or-
If you just read the background information, I think that'll be sufficient.
Okay. And 2019, the town applied for a cultural conservation grant in the amount of $13,905 to support the conservation of 4 hand-painted curtains at the Grassmere Town Hall. The town was successful in this grant application, and the conservation work is tentatively scheduled for June of 2020. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak to this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Need a motion.
Make a motion to accept and expend the unanticipated funds under RSA 31:95-B in the amount of $13,905 made available through a cultural conservation grant for the conservation of 4 hand-painted theater curtains at the Grassmere Town Hall.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. And we're into the town administrator's report.
Thank you. At tab 7A, you have your meeting schedule. There's no meetings this week. Just as you announced earlier, a reminder that Friday, January 31st, the town clerk's office will stay open till 5 p.m. To accept any candidate filings. Again, Friday, 5 p.m. is the last time they'll be accepted. And on Friday, the person must appear in person. On Saturday at 10 a.m. at the high school, you've got the school deliberative session. Next week, reminder that you have a special select board meeting at Fire Station 18 to administer oaths of office to the new firefighters and the deputy fire chief. On Tuesday at 7 p.m., you have the town deliberative session at the high school, Craig Heber Auditorium. On Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. is EDC in this room. Normally that's covered by Chet. I'll confirm with him that he's able to attend that. On Thursday is the snow date for the town deliberative session if needed.
If you can't make that, let me know.
Okay.
When do we want to do scripts?
I'm finalizing those in select board discussion later this evening.
Okay.
I wanted to get which member wanted to speak for which, and I can finalize those and send those to you, and then work with the individuals on which one they're speaking to.
Sure.
I'll get that later in select board discussion. On 7B, you've got your consent agenda. Under employee status reports, you have a call firefighter EMT resignation. You have a firefighter 1 AEMT merit increase. We had 2 additions late this afternoon under the employee status reports. One is a firefighter, merit increase to a firefighter/paramedic, and then a DPW laborer discharge. You have the 2020 default budget of the municipality. There are 4 copies of that, and that needs a signature of the entire board. You have the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services Household Hazardous Waste Grant from DPW. That needs a signature of the designee. In the past, we've designated the DPW director to facilitate that application in that program. We have an amendment to IDC Web Services Agreement. This is to allow a new member service ID to accept credit cards for people paying ambulance bills through the vendor that we currently use. And that needs a signature of the chairman or designee. You have a proclamation, and then one other item that was emailed out to board members earlier, and you have paper copies in front of you. The fourth quarter budget transfer to adjust for health benefits and transfer those back to the individual departments for those employees that choose to opt out of health insurance.
Motion to accept the consensus folder as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Kelly. Just one question. So the total transfer amount is 40,805, and that's for the fourth quarter.
For the fourth quarter of 2019, yes.
Right. Good, okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Does the motion include designating the DPW director to do the DES household hazardous waste grant? Is that what was?
That's what I would request, yes.
Yeah. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
Thank you. At tab 7C, you have the assessor's recommendations. The town assessor recommends the following. Land use change tax for map 4, lot 20-3. You have a veterans tax credit for map 4, lot 100-32. Map 6, lot 67-4. Map 4, lot 100-15. Map 5, lot 95-2. Map 6, lot 22-4. Map 6, lot 58. Map 9, lot 51. Map 17, lot 135. Map 29, lot 8. And then you have a veteran and disabled veteran for map 38, lot 112.
Motion?
Motion to accept the assessor's recommendations as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Collis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
At tab 7D, the select board annually reappoints a tax collector to a one-year term that expires March 31st the following year. We'd ask for you to reappoint Stephanie Bodwin as a tax collector for a term expiring March 31st, 2021.
Motion to reappoint the tax collector, Stephanie Bowden, for another period of 1 year,
Expiring March
March
31st.
31st, 2021.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
At tab 7E, you have the recommendation from the Economic Development Council. They met on January 8th and recommended the select board appoint alternate member Greg Rodriguez to a vacant full member position. This term would expire March 31st of this year, at which time Kathy Ball does all the reappointments for all of those. So it is a short term with the understanding that EDC will bring forward their recommendations on all expiring terms at the next meeting.
Motion to appoint Greg Rodriguez to full member on the Goffstown Economic Development Council for a term ending March 31st, 2020.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
At tab 7F, you have two separate memos from the finance director. The first is related to Article 22 from 2019 town meeting. This was the sports complex special article that had a portion of funds coming from the Parks and Rec impact fees, $60,000. She's requesting release of those impact fees to reimburse the general fund for those expenses as per what was voted on at town meeting.
This was in the project, that's what it was budgeted for, so when we budgeted it.
I'll make a motion to approve the release of $60,000 from the Parks and Recreation impact fees to offset the expenses incurred in relation to the sports complex project in 2019 and reimburse the town's general fund.
Second.
Motion by Collis, seconded by Kelly. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
On the next page, you have a similar request on Article 21. This was the Dispatch Communication Center. As you may recall, the former police chief greatly reduced the scope of that project. So far, a total of $70,125.48 was expended, of which $165,000 was planned and $45,000 to come from public safety impact fees. The finance director is requesting that you use, again, those $45,000 of public safety impact fees. As we started looking at the dates of those, she's also requesting the additional $25,125.48 to come from public safety impact fees as well, rather than to come from fund balance.
Anticipating them expiring?
Anticipating them expiring later in 2020 with no projects identified,
Okay.
thereby saving that fund balance
Yep.
where it currently is.
Motion?
Motion to approve the release of $45,000 from the public safety impact fee accounts to offset the expenses incurred in relations to the Dispatch Communications Center project in 2019 and reimburse the town's general fund. And then also a motion to approve the
You
additional,
want those two separate motions?
Yeah, we would like the two separate motions, as one was specifically identified in the special article.
I'll
So-
second.
Second on the first one by Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
And then motion to approve the additional request to release $25,125.48 from the public safety impact fee accounts to offset the expense incurred in relation to the Dispatch Communications Center project in 2019 and reimburse the town's general fund.
I'll second that as well.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
At tab 7G, you have a draft, or I guess a final RFP for municipal legal services. The request is to allow us to release this and send this out to firms throughout New Hampshire. And I believe the response date is March, I forget what day they put on it, March 5th, 2020.
I'll make a motion to authorize the release of the municipal legal services RFP.
Second.
Seconded by Collis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
At tab 7H, we have two separate items, but they both deal with the 2021 and 2022 legislative policy setting. The first issue, you have a, New Hampshire Municipal Association is recruiting both volunteers to serve on their legislative policy committees, and they're also accepting legislative policy proposals. The deadline for volunteers to serve on a legislative policy committee is, they did not set a firm date, but it is arriving fast, as their organizational meetings will be on April 3rd. And then they'll be accepting legislative policy proposals through April 17th. I don't necessarily need a decision on this evening, but I didn't know if the select board was interested in either volunteering or submitting anything for that legislative policy.
Let's think about this. Bring it up at the next meeting.
All right,
We can put, if you want to put it on the tick file or whatever.
okay. And then the next, if you flip a few pages, you have a memo from the town assessor. The town assessor has been tracking bills related to assessments, and he has identified two, and he's requesting permission to testify at. The first one is Senate Bill 425, which is an act prohibiting registers of deeds from charging fees to municipalities for copies of documents used for tax purposes. Earlier this year, we received notice from Hillsborough County that they had changed software vendors for their registry, and we are now being charged anytime we are printing off copies for tax purposes, where in the past the assessor was able to print those off and put those in. He would like your permission to testify against this. The meeting for this is scheduled for this Wednesday, the 29th at 9:30. So he would like your, I guess, your blessing to testify against, because that is an added cost that has come to the town.
I think we should support that.
And then the second item is House Bill 1421. This is an act relative to application of the equalization rate to be used for the calculation of property tax abatement by the New Hampshire Board of Tax and Land Appeals, the Superior Court, and all cities, towns, and counties. Talking with Scott, this basically, you need to use the equalization rate for the preceding year to be used for property tax abatements. This is not so much a concern for him here, because he knows where his equalization rate usually is, and he's pretty good. But he hoped to provide his expertise and his knowledge. He served many years on the BTLA, and would just, this is something that really affects a lot of the assessors in up north. So he would like permission to go and speak on this bill to explain the impact that it would have. He's not as concerned about this one, but again, he'd just like to lend his expertise to the committee that's studying this.
I'll make a motion to authorize the assessor to testify on SB 425 and HB 1421.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
That's all I had for a town administrator's report.
I'm just concerned, I know it doesn't make a difference. I'm trying to work with the county, and then testifying against it might be a problem. Okay, action matrix. We're gonna put one on there, right?
Yes.
What we just talked about?
Yep, legislative policy.
Yep.
Yep.
Wallace Road yet? Nothing?
On Friday of last week, DPW director and Mike Hillhouse and I sat down with a consultant, and they had draft plans. We went over those. They're gonna finalize some of those plans, and they're working on the construction estimates, so they're nearing completion on their recommendations on that.
I see somebody drove through it again.
Do we have a tentative proposed date when they might be able to do that?
I can get that from them. It would not be for next meeting, but, and the construction estimates are gonna take a little time, but I would expect that we would get it at least by March, their final memo on that. But I will reach out to them to get a tentative date, but they are very close on that.
Okay, then the next one, we're expecting some feedback on sometime in February.
Yes, right now I have draft info tech policies that I'm going to be emailing to all the board members in those draft documents in Word format, so you can start marking them up. And we're pretty close on the inclement weather policy, as well as the conditional offers of employment template. So I'm going to start rolling those out every couple weeks to give you a, whether it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks to review and come back. And I think we can start working on that, so.
Call us, next one. Ad hoc committee,
Yep.
Glen Lake?
Yep, we're meeting on February 20th.
Okay.
We did get some draft language that the committee members are looking at
Yep.
right now.
I haven't received the draft language, but I did talk with the chair of that ad hoc, and it's forthcoming.
Good, thank you.
Communication strategy is gonna work first quarter. Grants, Vista?
Vista, they have accepted the final paperwork and submitted to their regional office for approval of the position. As soon as we hear on that, I'll let you know, and then we will work with them to fill the position and start that work.
Okay, the next one we can take off our,
Yep.
okay. Repairs. Police car number 18 and police truck number 16.
Those are both went out today, and they're due back on Friday of this week.
Okay. Spreader chain, that's been out for a little while. We're still waiting for that, Al? Go ahead.
One part, I think, still outstanding on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, the trucks are still able to plow, it's just not able to spread. So Zeb said that the part's doing, he's just waiting on one thing.
Okay. Then we have the warrant presentation.
Well, the first item you've got is you still have, the last date for submission of petition warrant articles was on the 14th. We did receive 2 petition warrant articles, and those were both verified by the supervisor checklist. The first one, and I'll just read it, will be Article 13, to see if the town will vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 72:35, Roman numeral 1-A, for an optional veterans tax credit of $4,000 for service-connected total disability on residential property and replace the standard tax credit in its entirety. Currently, the service-connected total disability tax credit is $2,000. There's a change in legislature that allows towns to adopt up to $4,000. So that would do this. And you have in your packet the background information. In 1990, it went from 700 to 1,400. In 2004, it was increased from 1,400 to 2,000. The assessor currently lists 50 such credits, so the impact would be approximately $100,000 a year. And again, because it's a credit, it's off the total amount of taxes collected, so that has to be spread out. So.
Didn't we have a battle with this a couple of years ago?
I don't remember a battle, but I do
Now we got a
remember.
lot, got
we
a lot
had-
of people speaking to it.
Yeah,
My recollection is that the elderly exemption,
It was the elderly exemption.
the elderly exemption came up, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, or 2 or 3
There was
years
quite a bit of
ago.
discussion on that.
But everything I could find was the last time the veterans tax credit, because again, it's been at the max of $2,000, and now you have that change in the legislation that allows up to $4,000. So everything I found, this has not been visited since 2004.
Mark, you were gonna say something?
no, I remember a discussion, I don't remember heated debates or battles, but I do, there was some discussion about that. That was pretty much all I remember. People came in and spoke in favor of it.
So the total impact is $100,000 a year. There's a 0 missing there.
Yes, there is.
I make a motion, we go with it recommended to the deliberative session.
I'll second that.
We have that option with enough feedback or
Yep.
kick. If we-
Yep.
Article 14,
So that was,
We have a vote.
oh, I'm sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, seeing none, motion.
motion to recommend.
Yeah.
Okay, then the next item was Article 14. Again, this was verified by the supervisor of the checklist. To see if the town will urge the New Hampshire General Court, following the 2020 census, to redraw the state's political district maps in a fair manner, providing for effective representation of New Hampshire's voters. And, in order to fulfill this obligation, the New Hampshire General Court shall appoint an independent redistricting commission to draw the district maps in a way that does not rely on partisan data favoring political parties of candidates. Within 30 days after the town election, the record of the vote approving this article shall be transmitted by written notice from the Goffstown Select Board to all Goffstown state legislators and to the Governor of New Hampshire, informing them of the results.
Some history behind this?
No?
No?
Within 30 days. So we're just to tell them what the results were
vote
from the
was.
election?
Yeah.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this. So this is saying that we are giving the residents of Goffstown the opportunity to support or not support the redistricting and the impact that it might have on Goffstown specifically?
That's the way I read it.
That's the way I read it?
No, it's on
But
the
it doesn't speak to Goffstown?
Yeah.
But I'm
I
saying
was
why
gonna say
we
that.
would put that on our ballot would be to give the residents
Right.
the option to voice their opinion, because it doesn't really have any financial impact on us, right?
No, again,
No
this would
financial impact on it at all. It's
just
just,
be a recommendation from Goffstown Town Meeting to,
I'll make a motion to recommend the petition article as submitted to deliberative.
Second.
I'm not sure if I like this.
Yeah,
Huh?
is there anybody here to speak to this? I mean, do you want to have any background at all on this, where it came from, what the impetus was? And
we will reach out to the petitioner, and we've made them aware of the date and time of the deliberative session, and that they should be prepared to speak on it, as we do with all petition articles that we receive.
Yeah, but we're being asked to recommend or not recommend.
Yeah, I'm not voting for this, not without somebody here telling me. So the motion's on the floor to recommend, the board recommend this. Kelly made the motion, it was seconded by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I'm
Yeah,
opposed.
Yeah, I'm opposed.
Motion fails. Do we have to have a recommendation on it at this time? Do we want to give,
For the warrant, yeah, you do.
so, okay.
So it's asking the legislature to appoint an independent redistricting commission. So that's all it's asking to do, is appoint a commission. And then in 30 days after town election, record the vote. Send it to the legislature and governor. I don't understand it.
So what they want to do is they want to come up, if I understand this right, so that's what redistrict, like how many rep we would have is,
Yeah, throughout the state, after the census come out, they, in some cases, I think in 2010, the floateral district that we have, that we share currently with Ware and Deering, previously was just Ware and Goffstown. So it's, they based on population, they redistrict where those state reps lines are.
so based on that, we could act, either gain or lose, or
Yeah.
status quo.
I believe that could go either way. Just
Yeah.
You know, so it says informing them of the results, and then what are they gonna do with the results? I mean, that's, you know, it just kind of leaves this big question mark hanging out.
Well, no, because if enough people vote for it, that means they're going to, it gives them the opportunity to possibly set up this independent redistricting commission to draw the district maps in a way that does not rely on partisan data favoring political parties or candidates.
That's part of it.
Yep.
Then the other part is to record the vote and transmit it by written notice to state legislators and the governor, informing them of the results, okay.
But when you put something like this out there, who's going to understand it? If we're having a hard time.
Exactly. And there's nobody here to speak to it, explain it, so.
So
they're
the
asking-
gentleman who put this article forward, he should be there, and it would be in his better half if he's in support of this article, to show up the night to discuss it and to debate it and to explain that.
Well, he should be showing up to us because
Why
we're asking
would-
for a
he's asking us
recommendation
for a
from us.
He should
recommendation.
be here tonight, should be here tonight.
Right.
I think that's a failure on my part to have that person come forward this evening.
Where's that whip?
Well, let's table it to the next, well, wait a minute.
We
No,
can't
we
We don't have any,
Yeah, yeah.
we don't have any time left, do we?
No,
And can we, the amendment could be changed at I mean, I'm sorry, the article could be changed at,
If the wording were changed at town meeting, you would have the ability to change your vote, because it would be a different article.
So if we vote to not recommend this at this time, and then we heard the argument at deliberative session, we could vote to change our recommendation. That's correct?
Provided there is an amendment to the article.
You can only change your vote if it's been amended.
I know that's how it is with budget committee. I would have to get legal counsel feedback and or redone.
Another
But
500.
normally the money articles, you cannot
Right.
revote unless there's an amendment. And it was my understanding that was the same with all the separate articles as well.
Bring it back next year when we're better educated. I'm not gonna recommend it. Right now.
I mean, to me, this says it's just giving the people of Goffstown a voice based on this. So I'm happy to hear it and make amendments at deliberative. I mean, someone put
Well,
this
we're
forward.
recommending it. We're recommending we do
We gotta
this.
do that now.
That's what you want. We're if we vote yes on this, that means we're recommending to have it, to do it.
Right. That's the way I read it.
It's not,
Right, I mean, it has no financial impact.
well, this is not
On
just
us?
financial impact. Well, it's just going to, and I'm gonna step off the reservation here for a minute. And it says the Goffstown Select Board to all the Goffstown state legislators and to the governor. So all we would be doing is transmitting this information to our representatives.
Correct.
See, I have one here in the audience. Can I ask you, do you know about this? I mean,
Yeah, what up?
we have State Rep Barbara Griffin with us, and
Here for completely unrelated reasons.
I know that.
So you know, I will speak just to this to assist the board, but in my opinion, you're being sucked into a state political and partisan issue. And it's pretty clear to me by the appearance of this. An independent districting commission was an article that passed the House last session and was vetoed by the governor, and the veto was sustained. It became a political hot issue up in Concord, and I have to tell you, as a state rep, I don't recall being contacted by more, if at all, 6 people on this issue. So there was an independent redistricting commission proposed, which I assure you was substantially more complicated than just a commission, as is being put forth. Because as you can imagine, asking politicians to appoint people to a nonpartisan board is an exercise that made many people smile. So there have been new bills submitted this year for an independent redistricting commission that in fact look exactly like the one from last year. So it's my understanding that there's sort of an effort being put forth across the state in various communities in an attempt to get this on the ballot, to push it forward. And that's what you're seeing here. As to my recollection for being on the board, as to a recommendation going, it is also I thought I recalled that there were occasions when we put forward articles that came forward without a recommendation to the meeting, that it had to be for budget-related issues that a recommendation had to be on. But I was actually looking that up, well, when you mentioned it. But that's what this is all about. It was a bill that passed the State House last year. I have not spoken to the person who set forward the petition warrant article, but the reference to an independent redistricting commission would be exactly the same as the bills that were forward last year and the bills that are coming forward this year. So we have had similar warrant articles in the past asking that a letter be transmitted to some other body with the vote, and that's literally what the letter does. It's a letter that says, please be advised that on such and such a date, a vote occurred on this matter, and this was the vote. Because as you can see from the warrant article, it really doesn't give any other direction. So I'm sure the proponent can give you more, the proponent of this can give you more information at the deliberative session, but that's the background for why you're seeing something like this. It's a matter in Concord that many people are not happy with the results, and therefore there's an initiative going forward. And the redistricting process itself is a little more obtuse and complicated than what you were just referring to, but you don't need to know that for purposes of what you're talking about right now.
Thank you, Barbara. So there's a little bit of information. So, first of all, Barbara brings up a good point that we need to have a recommendation. Derek, you're trying to figure that out.
That's what I'm looking at now.
And if that's the case, then I guess my motion was
To recommend,
to bring it to deliberative.
but do we have to recommend? Either recommend or not recommend.
But I don't, Gail, what was the
recommend-
motion?
You
You and I
recommend,
both recommended.
I thought I said to deliberative. Okay, that's fine.
and I voted against.
You have to find the procedure.
Just for the board's information, I'm on an NHMA site, and the question is, can we include recommendations on other warrant articles that don't include appropriations? The only statutes allowing selectmen to place recommendations on the warrant or ballot are those above discussed operating budgets and special and separate appropriations articles. No other selectmen's authorizations appear to be authorized. However, they may include it, and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah.
So we can't do it.
So it's not recommended.
There's no,
This is just based on
That's New Hampshire Municipal Association.
on New Hampshire Municipal Association. And
So-
and if you're worried about it, you can change one word on
Yeah.
the article at the meeting, which doesn't change the substance of it if you think you need to do that to change your position.
But Derek, you said it was approved by
It was
some
a
sort of.
petition article, and it had the requisite number of
25
registered voters.
25 signatures.
So it will be on the warrant. And
Yeah, it'll be on it, but it just, there's a question on whether we have to
What
have a
action we take.
recommendation.
Exactly.
I would make the motion that at this point, not having the full answer, that we do not have a recommendation on it. We do not recommend.
Yeah, and I'll second that motion because the prior motion failed.
Right.
No recommendation or not to recommend?
Not to
Not to
recommend.
recommend.
And then if we find out, Derek, if you find out that we shouldn't have the recommendation on it,
We can
then we
change it.
can,
We can change it,
yeah. Well, we could not have a recommendation.
or change that to
Yeah.
deliver. Yeah, I'll second that. Is that your motion?
Yeah, that was my motion. It sounds like the governor vetoed it. I mean, probably would do it again, but. So my motion on the floor is for the select board to not recommend this until we get further answers. You understand what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
if we shouldn't have a recommendation, then we won't. But if we have to have a recommendation, I'm saying no. And it was seconded by Collis. So, you know, it's discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Kelly, did you vote? Are you voting?
I did, yeah,
Oh, yes?
yes.
Okay, I didn't hear you. I just trying to make sure. All in favor?
Derek, can we make sure that the person who submitted this will be at?
yeah, we've already reached out to them and told them the time and the process for speaking to it and deliver. We'll reach out to them again.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Who might that be? And who might that be?
Her name's Marie Morgan.
Thank you.
Okay, so next is, this is on you again, Derek?
Yeah, I just wanted to see which select board members wanted to speak to the separate articles. I think traditionally, the budget committee, or the select board's rep to the budget committee, has spoken to Articles 6 and 7, which is the operating budget, and then also tied in with that is the appropriation from EMS Special Revenue Fund, so I would put Select Woman Boyer on that. And then there's the Fire Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund,
Mark, as usual.
the Grassmere Town Hall Capital Reserve Fund. I don't know if Selectman or Vice Chairman Lemay is willing to do that, as he's the
Sure.
HCC
Yep.
rep. Road Improvement Program,
I'll do it.
Crispin House,
I'll do these next two.
okay. On Article 13, the Veterans Tax Credit, that would be to introduce and explain any potential impact, and then turning it over to the floor.
I'll do that one too, because I got the easy ones.
Okay.
Other ones got a lot of talking to do.
And then Article 14, I'll just put you down to introduce it and move it to the
Introduce it,
floor. Okay.
And then what we'll do is, Article 6 and 7, second,
Okay.
Collis, you can second the next one, Mark. You do Mark's next two,
I'll second, yep.
okay? I'll second you on the road, and then
I can do the Crispin House. or the-
second Mark, second Collis, or, yeah. Second Kelly, how's that? We got it covered?
Yep.
Concludes everything, right?
Yeah, the only item left would be to do non-public, and you
Right.
added a couple of
Yes.
items. to
Is there
that.
anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, this will conclude our public portion of tonight's meeting. We'll be going into non-public now. Thank you for watching.
Make a motion, we go into non-public session, RSA 91-A:32 for A, discipline and compensation.
And
And also C, adversely.
Adversely
affecting
affect the reputation.
Second.
Seconded by Kelly.
Yes.
Yes.
All in favor? Yes.
Aye.
Motion passes. We're closed. Non-public. Let's go.